Welcome back, everyone. This is in your tabletop feed, but it isn't Monday, and that is because we wanted to do a quick update on the OGL episode we released on Monday, but more on that is going to be told by Shade. Shade, why don't you kick it with the disclaimer?
Hey, everyone. Thanks very much for listening. So, last time on the, what was that? Monday the 16th? Yeah, the 16th. We
Indeed.
released our first OGL episode. So the OGL is the everything going on with the OGL has been pretty complicated and more than a little disheartening. And at the time, we were trying to keep things pretty simple and broad. But over on our Discord, which you should join, it was pointed out to us that we missed the mark on whether the leaked OGL 1.1 would have affected actual plays and fan creations. At the time, and trying to keep things broad, we erroneously indicated that OGL 1.1 wouldn't hurt fan creations and actual plays, but a more accurate or specific statement would be that the original OGL 1.0a, if you like, did not specify what kinds of content fans could create and make money off of. However, OGL 1.1 leaks stated that the license, quote, only allows for creation of role-playing games and supplements in printed media and static electronic file formats. It does not allow for anything else, including but not limited to things like videos, virtual tabletops, or VTT campaigns, computer games, novels, apps, graphic novels, music, songs, dances, and pantomimes. You may engage in these activities only to the extent allowed under the Wizards of the Coast fan content policy or separately agreed between you and us, end quote. So the fan content policy...
I love that they specifically called out pantomimes.
Yeah, that's a really fun thing. It's something that you know what? I'm not a legal expert, but I feel like pantomimes is something you see a lot in
Legal
UK.
speak.
Well, yeah, legal speak, but also in UK stuff.
Yeah.
Because they're more of a tradition out in the UK than they are here in the US. Anyway,
I love a pantomime school.
So it's worth noting, there's more to it than just that. There's a lot of reason for content creators to kind of be afraid when they saw the 1.1 leaks, and perhaps even now that the 1.2 draft has come out. But we'll maybe get on that in a little bit. But the fan content policy, let's talk a little bit about that, because it clearly spells out that people can make fan content so long as they don't make money from it. And that was a big sticking point.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that from where I was coming from a little bit when I was saying like, hey, most people don't really have to worry about this, is that most actual plays, like 95% of them, most videos on YouTube, all those things probably go fairly unnoticed by Wizards of the Coast, like it's probably not something that they have to really be concerned about. Like this is going to end their ability to do so. But it gives, you and I had a chat about this too. It gives Wizards it gives them the ability to say, hey, YouTube, we don't like this one video. It was pretty like anti this book we put out or whatever. We want you to take this down because it is against our policy. Or like this actual play is, saying something that we're not really interested to have associated with our brand. We want this taken down. Or they can use these things as cudgels to silence or to end things that they don't feel is like a good part of their brand. And then things that are much more profitable, like the critical roles and all that kind of stuff, then they actually get a major slice of the pie because they can, use this to like take their due as they think of it. And I think that is generally what most people are super concerned with, and for good reason. Like companies should never be trusted.
Yeah.
But I think that is where I came from originally, of like, this probably won't affect most folks because they won't take the time to like send a legal lawsuit or whatever, but it can. And that is, I think, the big problem that the community is having right now.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's very clear that the 1.1 leaks and really even this 1.2 draft that has come out, they are seeking to get money and really limit people's abilities. If you are earning money from making something that revolves around D&D, they want a slice of that, or they don't want you to be making that money. One of the two. And it's there's really no doubt about that. There are going to be levels of variances, and I'm sure, there's always that one channel that might fly under the radar or something like that.
Right.
But
well, so in our Discord, an example that came up would be like a psychotherapist who is using D&D as a therapeutic tool, and that any money, if the therapy practice was centered around D&D as a product that was used to, help people with overcome anxiety or whatever it is, that would also kind of fall within this, and you'd have to report your earnings. I just don't. For me, it seems inconceivable. And also, I wasn't around in the community when the first OGL drama happened, so I don't really know how litigious they want to be. But it seems like pretty crazy to me, like if that therapeutic practice did not report their earnings to Wizards of the Coast, that they would be like, we're coming down on you hard.
I mean, I totally get that. But I think the bigger problem, of course, is, it's the possibility that they could.
Yeah, totally. And also, I wonder how much of this is them trying to establish brand specificity. Like, they have a bunch of published worlds and stuff. I feel like in a court of law, even with the new OGL, it would be really hard for any sort of decision to come down against somebody who was creating their own story with their own characters in their own world. And honestly, a lot of times when people homebrew, they also homebrew monsters. So like maybe this is a case where you don't use Owlbear or Mind Flayer or whatever. And I have a really hard time picturing a court of law upholding a business being able to like take a chunk of whatever you were doing just because you were using a rule set that is also protected under a creative, like it is protected already. Like they can't really own the rule set anyway, because you can't own rule sets for board games or any sort of these games, you know what I mean? But yeah, again, like in we're kind of going around saying the same thing over and over, where it is like, it's not that it does feel pretty weird and unimaginable that they would actually be able to win. But then you think about our actual system in which people with lots of money get to buy really well-paid lawyers to out legal you, and you're just like some guy making, or a gal or a person who's just like making a story with your friends and putting it online. Like they're going to bulldoze you, you know? So it's sort of like, that is maybe the actual thing to be concerned about, is that the possibility of it opening, you know?
Yeah. I mean, again, when you're going from something that very, very much does not stipulate any restrictions on making money around the product to something that has some pretty tight restrictions on not making money, essentially saying that you can't make money at all, you're going to be affected largely.
Totally.
One way or the other. I mean, who knows? I will say, of course, they've since released the draft 1.2.
Yeah, let's talk about that. This is...
Yeah.
Okay, so first let's do a little bit of history, or not history, news, I guess, that they came out with a couple of statements. One being like, hey, we're going to be talking about this soon. We're like not going to be going through with 1.1. We're going to figure something else out. They released a 1.2 draft that is going to be able to be looked over by the community, and then they're going to give a sort of period of time for people to make comments and suggestions, and then they're going to, revise it and release it or something. And in this new 1.2, they're kind of shifting gears, and they're going towards a Creative Commons license for D&D IP. So you probably understand this a little bit more than me. What does that shift mean,
I mean, I'm not going to pretend to be a legal expert at all. What I will say is that, okay, there are some good steps here, but it is by no means better than what we already had with 1.0A. And it's very clear. So they make very clear in this that they intend to deauthorize OGL 1.0A, saying that it's no longer an authorized license. This means,
but they did say anything that was released under it can retain 1.0 status, right?
Well, so yeah, I mean, specifically, it says the following. This means that you may not use this version of the OGL or any prior version to publish SRD content after an effective date. The date's not put there yet, of course. It does not mean that any content previously published under that version needs to be updated to this license. Any previously published content remains licensed until whichever version of the OGL was in effect when you publish that content. So, yes, things that already existed before a certain date, whenever that date is decided, and if this 1.2 is what ends up being the final draft, let's say, yeah, that stuff theoretically is fine, but it does mean that you won't be able to do things going forward, which utilizing the rules therein, you'll have to play by this new 1.2 rule set, which is problematic. I mean, there are things that are going to rely on the 1.0a in the past, and being able to do things going forward and only using the more restrictive 1.2, that's going to cut into people's content quite a lot. The Creative Commons is great, I think, generally speaking. Wizards is saying that they can, you can utilize these core D&D mechanics under the Creative Commons, which is not managed by Wizards. I think that's a good step and would have been a much more friendly way to start things off. But, we also have a lot of small little things hidden in this 1.2 draft. Use of the D&D content in virtual tabletops is allowed in the terms under their virtual tabletop policy. And if you click on that link, it takes you to Wizards' website, but it doesn't take you directly to the policy. At least not when I click on it here. So let me try that again.
Well, I think that it's widely expected that they're still going to try to pull some shady shit.
Yeah. I mean, this is not a. I said on the 16th that they're going to probably pull something where they have already provided us with something that is a truly bad deal through the 1.1 leaks, and they're going to try and provide something that is a slightly less worse or less bad deal. That's what
point to shade for prediction. One,
I mean,
do you have a prediction about what's upcoming? Because there's like different ways for this to go. Like they apparently have lost 40,000 subscribers on D&D Beyond, which is
a wild I hadn't seen that number.
Yeah, 40,000. It's quite a lot.
Wow.
We make up a couple of those people, and I'm in a couple of actual play Discords and things like that, and people are like, I'm bouncing. Should we leave for something else? I will say that while creators feel very firmly about this, I think that the general public who are not making these items are feeling like just stay with it. Like, we want our D&D content. So I'm interested to see whether or not they're going to be forced to go further on this or not.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, maybe it's different for me. All of the little circles that I'm seeing, it's people up in arms. I see a handful of people be like, I'm just going to keep playing 5th edition and things like that, or I'm not canceling my subscription. But they're the exception. But to be fair,
I think that we also just have to consider what the kind of communities that we are seeing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. To be fair, it is more likely that you will see inflammatory content online than you will.
Yeah, totally. Algorithms run that way. Yeah, I don't know. I personally, I feel like this is a huge win for the TTRPG market anyway, just because it's going to really encourage a lot of people to explore. Yeah, it's gonna. Yeah. You know me. I've always thought that I would prefer people to really get invested in other types of content. An example of this. One of the most viral tweets that the Tabletop Twitter account @Tabletop, for those who want to follow, has ever released was like a meme that was like, when do we get to see other things other than D&D? And then the other panel is like, that's the cool thing. You don't, kind of thing. And everyone just started, like 2,000 people started like talking about it and like, you know, throwing their opinions down. Just like a lot of people have very strong opinions about D&D versus other games. And I hope that what this has done is broken the stranglehold that D&D has on the public's imagination of what TTRPGs are, and people maybe are being a bit more malleable now to like try other stuff, because there's so much out there that is so cool. And hopefully this will give, you know, creators a chance to really put their stuff out there too, and get caught on. Like I've seen like 1,000% more Monster of the Week posts online, which has been great for me, because I'm like, yes, everybody do this. But I don't know. It could be that they're forced into a worse position, and then it goes back to OGL 1.0. But like the amount of trust that Wizards has just burned over this, and just like community sentiment that they are dealing with now, is just so negative that I don't know if they're not going to take a win out of this no matter what. I just don't know if they're going to plow ahead with their business plan, or if they're going to be forced to, you know, take a step back and deal with the consequences and return to the way things were, kind of thing.
So pretty standard business practices are, hey, we want to maximize profit. And to maximize profit, we need to hurt the consumer. How much can we hurt the consumer without truly having too much loss? We're going to expect losses when we make this move, but can we staunch those losses in the long run? And I think
that's true.
You know, I think that they are still weighing that. I don't think that any of this is going to go away. But more, you know, to your point and to what you were saying as far as people going to other TTRPGs, they certainly have lost a considerable amount of trust. And this is not really anything, excuse me, I'm so sorry, getting over a bit of a cold this week. This is not really anything new for Wizards, and certainly not something that should be outrageously surprising for anyone who was paying attention to how Wizards was operating in 2022. It was a terrible year to be a Wizards fan. Magic the Gathering had its 30th anniversary, and that was a tremendous joke where I may have said this in our last episode, but they literally put forward proxies that would run you, which is a not a official legal tournament card, but a something that you could print to represent that card. Normally is how a proxy would work. So I could write on a piece of paper and map it to a land.
Megadeth spell.
Right, exactly. And say like, hey, we're just having some kitchen table fun, and I really want to play this deck, but I also don't want to spend $1,000 to own that deck, so I'm going to make some proxies.
Well, this is the thing that's so surprising to me, is that what you just said, like, hey, we're just going to have some kitchen table fun. Like, that is exactly what they are trying to like clamp down on in a weird way. And they're like,
yeah.
And I guess it really kind of shows in the Magic release as well, where they're like, because proxies, if you go on Etsy, you can find some cool proxies. Yeah. And you can find like 3D proxies, all that kind of stuff. They released a $1,000 proxy that you can only use at home. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's just like, it's the same. It's like all of this homebrew content, we're like, you have to go through us. We're going to be paid for it. It's going to be more expensive in order for people to make the same that they were making before for their content. And all of that homebrew stuff you're doing, like that at your kitchen table, just you and your friends sort of thing, is just costing you more. It seems like they're just raising the base level price of the product without providing a better service or doing anything in exchange. Right. Which is, I think, the core of the problem. And I don't know if they're actually going to try to fix that. No, but we'll see.
Won't. They will not try and fix it. I'm sorry.
So going back to the updated OGL 1.2, what would it take for you to turn back on your D&D Beyond subscription?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't have a good answer for that. I
Mm.
mean, a big part of me wants to say, I've turned it off for right now, but frankly, I am admittedly one of those people who just kind of enjoys 5e as is, more or less. It's a nice, easy fallback, and I've always enjoyed working with D&D Beyond, and I have enough campaigns in my life that making that switch in the long run is going to just be a pain.
That's the thing that is so frustrating about this is that I'm
Yeah.
about to run a campaign. I'm starting to get into like the prep mode of it. And I'm just thinking two of the players in this are people who are very new to D&D, are not very like I ran a Monster of the Week like adventure for them, and they were really, taking a look at their sheets being like, how does this work, like what do I
Mhm.
do, and I had to kind of prompt them on that. And I'm really familiar with Monster of the Week, and it has about 1/10 of the rules of D&D
Yeah.
5e. And so just the idea that I'm going to have to do all of that prompting and everything on a pencil and paper and help them level up and all of that kind of stuff
Right.
without D&D Beyond is miserable. Like I'm
I
just
mean,
thinking about it being like, fuck, that
it
sucks.
it's not really that bad. I mean, I can't recall really how much pen and paper you did back in the day.
I did like,
Um,
no, I definitely did like
yeah,
2 to 3 years. It was basically
right,
like a pretty good chunk until you finally got us to switch on to it. The main
right.
problem for me is that like when I was doing pen and paper, we had our co-host Daniel walking me through that and helping me with all of it until I
Hmm.
got to the point where I was fairly proficient at all of this stuff.
Right.
But running two new people is just it just adds a lot of work to a dungeon master that feels it just feels like, oh, we didn't have to do this.
Yeah, yeah. But on the other hand, though, having said all that, it's not going to stop me from just going ahead and moving back to pen and paper. I mean,
Yeah.
it's uncomfortable. It doesn't feel fun because I was such a big Beyond fan.
Hmm.
I mean, I think I signed up within a day of its public launch. Because I was just ravenous for that kind of product. And
Yeah.
there are other options out there, but it really just did what I wanted. So, and I
Yeah.
also was pretty happy when Wizards bought it because I felt like, oh hey, that I
This
was
is a
an
good thing. Two
yeah,
years later. Oh no.
yeah, I was an optimistic fool. Um, yeah. So a couple other things just about the OGL 1.2 that worth saying. One of the lines in here, use of D&D content in streaming, fan art, cosplay, and other fan content is permitted as described in Wizards fan content policy, which is exactly what I already said at the top of this episode with the 1.1. I would still personally feel a little uncomfortable as a content creator of some sort doing anything because, again, the fan content policy pretty clearly states you can do this as long as you make $0 from it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing that's like so kind of like scary about how they're going about this next phase of it is that they are literally just doing the opposite of what you do in marketing, where you remove clicks between you and what you want your customer to see. They are adding clicks in between you and what the policies are. So it's just
Yeah.
obfuscating and making things seem like, oh, it's what the fan policy is. That's probably what we've been doing all this time. It's like, not really.
Yeah. So, I don't know that I would say that this is great in any stretch of the imagination. There's also this, there's there. So we didn't talk a lot about this, but in the 1.1 leaks, I kind of mentioned that they put forward this idea that, oh well, especially in the walkback in particular, which I guess we didn't talk about because we recorded before the walkback. They really put forward this idea of like, oh well, we were doing all of that so that we could make sure that that the D&D wasn't used in hateful language and rhetoric, which is to say, like, make sure that D&D wasn't being co-opted by bigoted racist shitheads.
Yeah.
which is great, right? That sounds fantastic. And I 100%.
I can get behind that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously, I don't want bigoted, racist shitheads having the same hobby as me, unless it somehow teaches them to not be bigoted, racist shitheads.
I'm not sure that their DMs are going to be using it as an empathy builder.
Yeah. But the thing is, they've got this this little clause here in the new OGL, the OGL 1.2, that that says that, you know, pretty clearly you can't utilize D&D with hateful content. And okay, great.
But you can do that without replacing the other stuff.
Well, yeah, but also it's worth noting that Wizards itself doesn't have a great track history, even in the current 5th edition.
I mean, we've had to talk about stuff in Spelljammer and, you know, all of the other ones where it's just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, Curse of Strahd even, just like, Curse of Strahd has a lawful, the original printing of that, I can't remember if this was one of the things, I think it may have been one of the things that was updated a little bit, but the original printing of that literally has a lawful good character who pretty much has like a desire to do a race crime, a race hate crime. He wants to go after the Vistani, specifically, and has very specific designs against them. And that was also with that publication describing them in very stereotypical ways. So, you know, it's not great.
It's always that thing where it's like, do you want one person deciding any of these policies and like who can and can't do anything? Like, do you want, you know, the company to do that? Because companies don't usually have a good track record with it. So
yeah, it's tricky. I mean, again, on its face, yeah, of course I want that. On when you kind of take a step back and think about what that implication might mean, you know, it gets tricky.
It's rough. Yeah. But overall, I think that like not a whole lot has changed. I would say, for folks, like, engage with the process. I would still cancel your D&D Beyond subscription to say like, hey, we don't want this change. Maybe they'll walk back to OGL 1.0. No. I don't think that they will.
Never.
And I think that what they're going to do is they're going to the next, I think, 2 months are going to be really important for the community. They like feel like, you know, we got a little bit of a win. They're making changes. Okay. But they're going to, if you don't really focus in and like add comments and really show them what you're concerned about and force them to respond, you're going to get, like you said, like a dumbed down version of 1.1 that is going to still really allow Wizards to pull some nasty shit to the community. I still like, my prediction, since we did predictions, you got a correct prediction last time, so maybe we should just throw out some fun predictions.
Sure.
My prediction is that there's going to be less change. There's going to be less outrage, less change between 1.2 and whatever it ends up being. It's going to be somewhat similar to 1.1 with different language and have like a little bit more inclusive stuff when it comes to fan content and actual plays and things like that. And then I think that they are within the next year going to start litigating against Pathfinder and some of the other big TTRPG companies. I think that all of this was for them to go after some of the ones that are cropping up using what they view as their system. And they're just trying to squash those parts of the market. And they're going to make it so that's the only option. And then they're going to try to switch it to be something like a MMO where you have a membership subscription required to play this easily. You know what I mean? Like, maybe it would be wild, but maybe they're even going to stop doing physical copies of D&D books, and you would have to have a D&D Beyond subscription. And then they can always make edit, and they'll say like, hey, it's great because we can do erratas and updates right in your books. It's going to be the most up-to-date content. But you're also not going to be able to own any of it. So like they could do some real weird shit. I'm thinking that most of this is going to be used to litigate against the bigger players that use D20 systems within the next year and a half.
And I think that they are going to be hurting smaller operations like your influencers, your actual play campaigns and things like that along in the process.
You think so, man? I just think that would be the
really
stupidest thing that they could do in the entire world, because it is free marketing for them. It's free marketing. It is literally them. It is them being like, here's this product. And then random people saying, I'm going to champion your product. Look at how much fun we have playing with your product. And we're going to distribute this. People are going to come on, listen to us, and they are going to get so inspired and so in love with like our stories and the way we do stuff and influenced by our personalities that they're going to start wanting to play and they're going to start buying this stuff. And if they just start squashing that, it's like the stupidest move, because you're just getting rid of like what amounts to essentially like $1 million of free marketing.
I mean, they already did it, though. They already, they already sent to these very people. This is how this stuff was leaked, right? They sent to these very individuals that they shouldn't be going after contracts with the 1.1 leaks.
Yeah.
So it's not as if they have their best interest in mind. It's not as if they are an intelligent operation on that side of things. And, it's worth noting, this is not to say that the people who actually make D&D, the people who actually design all the fun stuff, do all the art, all the adventures and stat blocks and things like that, who helped make it a reality. It's not to say that those people are malicious or that any of us should look to them with ire.
But if we also want to be 100% honest, the way that their company is structured, a lot of that work is through contractors who aren't actually staff members. You know what I mean? So it's like,
that's true. Yeah.
It's kind of in their DNA that they kind of absorb people, pay them a pittance, and then spit them back out at the end.
Yep. No, that's absolutely valid. I guess what I'm just trying to say is this is some C-level bullshit.
Oh yeah, totally.
This is not in the hands of someone like Jeremy Crawford, who is, of an executive kind of stature of sorts, but not the same kind as, this is just not a game designer's choice necessarily.
Yeah. And from all the reporting, it sounds like the C-suite has purposefully ignored staff level objections to this kind of work that they're doing. So who knows what's going to happen? Yeah. I really am interested to see what happens, because this isn't to say that it hasn't been released and I've just missed it. But I haven't heard anything about like a statement from Critical Role.
I can tell you what Critical Role said.
Oh, really? What they said?
Yeah. So this was, apologies. This was actually before our recording and before the walk back on December 12th. I forgot December 12th actually was prior to our recording too.
Do you mean January 12th?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, great.
Yeah, time is non-existent. I don't know.
Yeah, flat circle.
Again,
we got it.
coming off of a cold, my mind is not sharp. So they did put forward a statement, and boy, people were really divided online about this. But I will tell you that personally, it was exactly the kind of a statement that I would expect, and I think that it was right in line. They just made very clear that they support creators in game development and tabletop space. They stand by industry peers and anyone who takes risk in creating a new system or developing an original idea. Let's see. They mentioned the launch of their own gaming company a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And they believe that broadening the field of creators boosts the entire industry. The success we've experienced is thanks to the passion of this community. And they want to commit to fostering an environment that allows everyone the opportunity to easily share the stories they wish to tell. Now, what is lacking from that statement? Like, I didn't read it verbatim. I just more or less, what's lacking from it is like the actual words OGL or anything like that. And that's very much because, they probably have a lot of NDAs that they are under that restrict them from really saying specific things. But Matt Mercer was liking comments that spoke out against the OGL 1.1 leaks.
Has Dimension 20 or the McElroys said anything about this?
You know what? That I don't know.
I wonder, because, Brendan Lee Mulligan, who I know is just like one of many DMs that they have on there, but like he's like staunchly anti-capitalist.
Yes, he is.
So it'd be interesting. Like it's a hard time for creators in the space. If you are somebody who is not a creator and just is like a fan of the system, give some people some grace if they decide to move away from it. Stick with the actual plays you like if they decide to move to Pathfinder or Apocalypse World or whatever is their jam, because this is just like, it's a really hard thing that people are kind of going through when it comes to trying to retain some measure of control over their own creation. And I think that everyone is just like, the worst thing that could happen is that people who are like, but the only reason why I came here is because I like D&D. It's like, no, you like the stories. It's going to be good stories. People are going to find ways to make it super entertaining. You're going to learn new systems. Stick with the folks you like to listen to or watch on Twitch or whatever it is. D&D is not the be all end all. Nope. And as a community, we can really get through this together. And for those, like I know some actual play folks who are sticking with D&D, but they're like switching to purely homebrew stuff to really, take a step away from Wizards of the Coast while still retaining that D20 system that everyone really loves and understands. I think that is also valid. But if you do see them have to change that later on because of this, because they're still able to operate under the OGL 1.0 right now, if they have to make the switch later on, same thing, just support them because they don't want to make this change. Wizards is kind of forcing a lot of people's hands. So,
Yep.
We're fine. We get to just talk about all this shit.
Yeah. Sure.
we don't have to do any of that. We don't have to. We were thinking about at one point doing like releasing an actual play episode or whatever, but no, not anymore. Fuck that.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen. Not so long as things are in this Wild West. And if we do, it will be under a different system.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, so one of our co-hosts, Daniel, was like, don't you dare talk about D&D Onslaught. Like, fuck those people, all that. I have to say, there are a lot of people just getting absolutely screwed by this news. One of them is the movie, the D&D movie. They probably don't even know what the OGL is. And they're going to be totally destroyed. And that's a real shame because we don't get enough good fantasy content.
But I mean, on the other side of that, though, I mean, I'm with you. But also on the other side of that, maybe you got to speak out against a company.
Oh, totally.
In ways that work.
I'm totally. And like what I'm more purposely wanting to say is that D&D Onslaught is such a good game, and it is made by WizKids, who is not Wizards of the Coast. Well, I think that they're conflated, but they're not even owned by Hasbro. I looked it up. I don't think that I looked it up, and they're owned by a different company. They probably have a lot of deals with Wizards of the Coast, and I'm sure that the Wizards of the Coast is getting a slice of the pie there. But guys, D&D Onslaught's so good. So maybe give it some time, but pick it up later on if you're into it. Sorry, Daniel, I went against your idea there. But that's all I have to say.
Yeah. Again, just to really reiterate, the 1.1, very bad for everyone in fan creators and actual plays and everything. The 1.2, not really that much better. So
yeah, it's a very small step, and if you have the attention span and the willingness to keep pushing, like join the folks that are still pushing. Honestly, if we get like another 40,000 people, another 20,000 people to leave D&D Beyond, I think that they're going to be like, holy shit.
I think what will happen is Hasbro will then just dump the product.
which would probably be good because
Maybe.
Hasbro sucks. And then maybe it'll get picked up by someone who's more responsible. So
or it'll get picked up by someone terrible. Yeah, I'm sorry. Just
you're such a pessimist.
play. Grab some dice, grab some friends, do whatever sounds fun to you.
Yeah. And remember, it really like affects creators and people who want to put stuff out there for a monetization aspect of their thing, whether that is, you know, videos, homebrew, all that stuff. For folks that aren't doing that, just like you can still do this. And even if like the worst case scenario happens, you shouldn't be afraid of making this fan video that you've always wanted to make. As long as you're not making money off it, it's just, you know,
I mean, don't know how you're not gonna. I mean, I gotta say, I just don't know how you're not gonna
Shade,
be monetizing.
Wizards of the Coast fan policy allows.
but I just feel, I guess you could turn off the monetization on YouTube.
Yeah, totally.
But
like you just have to make the choice that, hey, what I'm doing right now is completely for the passion of it, and I will not gain anything from this, and Wizards could tell me to take it down at any point. So
yeah, I guess if you're fine with all that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you know my rule, Nick. Don't do things for fun. Do it for money.
Exactly. This is the only thing that drives this podcast: pure monetization. Just kidding. We make no money on this.
We do have a Patreon. Not a great plug for it, but there it is.
If you want to change that, head to patreon.com/tabletop and you can join for some extra content and have fun with us. But yeah, I think that this is a really weird time to be a fan of this kind of stuff. So let's get through it together. If you want to jump on the Tabletop Discord, tell us things that we messed up on this one, or things that we haven't mentioned, feel free to do so. We would love to talk to you about it. We're always learning new things, and we have a really cool little community in the Discord that we would love to share with the rest of you. So feel free to do that. Next week, we're doing our mailbag episode. So this coming Monday, it is a first of two. I'm super excited. I really loved this episode. So I hope you all are excited for that. And if you want to submit a mailbag question, you can by going to tabletoppod.com and scrolling down. And on the main page, there's a little contact form. Just write in your question, whether or not we can use your name, what your name is, or whatever you'd like to be called. And we will try our best to answer your questions in future episodes as well. All right. This was our bonus episode, OGL 1.1.2.
1.2 this time around, I guess, and hopefully the last time we ever talk about the OGL.
Oh God, I hope so.
Even if things change, I don't know if I want to talk about it.
You're like, I'm done. I can't do this to myself anymore. All right, y'all. We'll see you later. See you on Monday. Bye.
Bye.